Bill, first off, on November 22nd, 1963, just tell me how you found out about the day President Kennedy was shot.
Well, I was in my office over at the university, and I had just happened to turn the radio on. I don't generally have the radio on, but I just happened to do it, and uh, I was shocked because they came on that President Kennedy had been killed or been shot rather, and it just hit me very strange. I just felt terrible. As a matter of fact, tears came to my eyes, and I restrained myself from crying, but I felt like it, and I felt so bad that I just didn't want to stay at school any longer that day. So I took the rest of that day off and went home and talked with my wife, and because we had been in favor of Kennedy since he was in the legislature even before, and we'd heard him make speeches on it. We both actually cried together as we watched some of the news, and then later when they said he was definitely dead, and it was a very sad experience for us.
And you mentioned you heard it on the radio. You didn't have a TV, so you had to go home to watch the
Oh,
coverage.
that's right. I went home, but I went home not just to watch it on TV. I went home because I just knew I couldn't continue to teach that day, and so I had to get away and be by myself and home.
Yeah. When you found out that he had passed,
Uh,
what went through your mind then?
well, I wondered if it actually why he had been killed. Was it just somebody, or was there a plot? Was it a plot in the government? Because there was a lot of prejudice against people of his faith, as was mine, the Catholics, and so so many things came to my mind. It would be difficult to express all of them that came to my mind, but I just didn't know what was going to happen. I think most people were that way too.
And you mentioned you felt like you had a special connection to President Kennedy because you were the president of the Democratic Club of Kirksville.
Oh yes, that's right. We started the Democratic Club when shortly before Kennedy actually became a candidate, because we knew he was possibly going to be a candidate, and living in Kirksville, where it was majority, where it was a Republican county, we knew he would have a hard time gathering votes here, but so we wanted to try to do what we could. And so we had a lot of good Democrats that were at the university. So and then we used to meet and talk politics and various other subjects at the Bulldog Inn, which was right across the street from the campus, right kind of where the parking lot is now between the Student Union and McLean Hall is where the Bulldog Inn was. Well, anyhow, Andy Nemo, he was quite a guy, and he liked to get people together talking about politics. So we decided we'd start a Democrat club to see if we could do what we could for that. And so we did start the club, and I got elected president. And I don't know why, because there were a lot of people who were older and had a lot more experience with politics than I did. An interesting sideline on that I'd like to talk about, if we have time here, is two people. Andy Nemo was one, and Bing Xiao, a Chinese man. We found out that neither one of them were citizens. But they had lived here. Well, Bing Xiao had come here when he was 16 years old from China, and here now he was 40-some years old, and but he had never applied for citizenship, but he had voted. Same way with Andy Nemo. He had been born in Canada, had never, and came here as a child, and he had lived as if he were a regular citizen. So when we started this club, I found this out then. I didn't know it before that. So I said, you two foreigners better go get your citizenship papers and so forth. So I said, you can pass that test easy. You've been here long enough. Well, so you could go on the train to St. Louis. That's where you had to do it. And you had to leave at midnight and get down to St. Louis in the morning, and then you could come back and get back at midnight the next day.
Yeah.
So they decided to do that. So I went down there when they went to leave the train. I said, I just want to tell you two foreigners goodbye and good luck. And that night, then when they came back the next night, I came in. I said, I want to welcome you two new citizens. So we had a little fun with that idea. But so they actually have been participating as citizens for all these years, not citizens at all. But interesting story.
That's a good story. Yeah. Let me ask. Bill, the day after he was shot, what do you remember about that?
Well, again, I just remember how sad and shocking and disbelieving and terrible it was for our country and for the government. That's what I think.
If we could somehow do a hypothetical scenario, if President Kennedy hadn't been shot, how do you think our country would be different today?
If he hadn't have been shot, well, like I say, he would have been successful with some of the programs that in terms of integration, I think, and he was interested in helping various racial problems that we had. He tried to do something about that. We would have reached those things sooner, I think, than we did. And so I guess that's about what I'm thinking of. And of course, he was interested in more kindness in people. And of course, we didn't have the lack of kindness that we have now, but he was still interested. We might have gotten involved more with Russia than we did because of the circumstances that happened, but that's hard to say.
Bill, what do you think we lost on that day on November 22nd, 1963?
Well, again, I'd have to say that, well, the biggest thing, I think we lost our innocence and the fact that we didn't have a realistic concept of what our place was in the world, so that it's just hard to say what all we did. It's just such a difficult thing that after all these years and so on, it's but our place in the world is not as good as wasn't as good as it should have been when he first got killed. We lost some of that because we thought we were, well, it's kind of like living here in Kirksville. Let me go back and say another thing. When I was 20 years old in 1940, I'd hitchhiked to California. And when I got out there, I was overwhelmed by the difference in what people were talking about then and what out there and what they were talking about here. Here, you didn't hear all the talk about war and the fact that all this was going on. But out there, that's all they talked about the Japanese and so forth are going to come over here, and that's all you heard. And I thought, boy, this is a strange world. It's a lot different than Kirksville. And so I came to the conclusion that I'd been living in a cocoon in Kirksville, and in the Midwest, as a matter of fact, because when I got back and started telling about that, they looked at me like, you're a strange guy, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And so forth. And so when World War II actually started, I, of course, wasn't happy about it. I'd already enlisted, but then I almost felt redeemed with the people in Kirksville. They couldn't look at me now like I was half crazy because I was wondering what I talked about all that happened. Because
you knew.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the way it is when Kennedy got shot. You realize just how much you had not thought about the world and so forth, even though we had won World War II, and people were talking about it. So it brought out a whole different feeling about it, and I think about amongst the people too.
Yeah. How do you, it might be hard to answer this, but how do you think he would be remembered differently if that wouldn't have happened, if he had lived?
Well, of course, because he was shot under those circumstances, that gives you a certain aura that you wouldn't have had, of course. But on the other hand, his actions and his ability to talk to the people and so forth, it was kind of like President Roosevelt in a way. He could talk to the people and get them to listen to him and convince them of things that otherwise they might not have thought about. So I think he would have been on that level because he could. And we've had 2 or 3 other presidents like him too, but he was especially good at that. And of course, when Obama became president, part of his abilities were because he could talk very well and make good speeches and so forth. And he, like Kennedy and like some of our other presidents, had a good background and were very intelligent people. I guess that's what I.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great, Bill.